Hey guys, Nebula found me this channel, the Ramblin Transman, and again, it shows you trans men find out the hard way what the male experience actually is. This isn't the first video I have that's involving trans men, but I'm going to get into what he has to say, and I'll correct him for the few things he gets wrong, okay? Because the things he gets wrong is very important.
Oh, my microphone.
Oh, by the way, this how well testosterone changes women into men. I would never know he was a trans man. He's 100% looks and sounds like a guy.
There's some feedback, so I'm gonna have to probably put music in the background to reduce it. But I wanted to use it anyways, so hopefully it turns out all right. But so this video is gonna be a little intro into how I was red pilled as a transsexual trans man. So in other videos on my channel, I've already explained sort of what that means. I was born female, transitioned 12 years ago, live as a dude. And let me tell you, the process that I went through with one of my long-term exes during that transition period is what kind of woke me up to the difference between dating women as a female and dating women as, well, more of a male.
Yeah, of course. Women don't like men, dude, right? So they respected you as a female, as one of their own, and now you're the member of the opposing team.
Even though I know I'm not 100% male and I'm never going to be,
You're male in the way that it counts. You appear male. That's all it takes. Because it's our visual that makes that tells us how we're going to react to the person, right?
the programming that I believe all of us have when it comes to the sexes started to come out in that relationship, especially towards the end.
But it's not really programming, dude. This is an innate. People just once they hit puberty, we become subhumans. You know, we worship women and we despise men, male and female. That's the way it is. You're not going to deprogram this out of people.
And it really messed with me for many years after. And it wasn't until I became a long haul truck driver and I had time to kind of get lost on the online manosphere YouTube.
Why would you look up at the Manosphere? You know why? Because your sisterhood is for the sisters, right? And you're all alone and you realize, wow, I'm being gaslighted and lied to. It's not the way I thought it was going to be. So you start looking for Manospherian content, right?
Channels that I started to connect the dots into why, even though both of us were political and we understood the ethics of. Anyways, I don't even know how to talk about this because I haven't.
You stop there. Yeah, you're both feminist, right? So you're both part of a man-hating group. Now you're a man and you're saying, wow, this isn't working out.
I haven't really talked about it to people except for maybe one or two guy friends because I know that um, red pill stuff is demonized and seen very negatively in the trans and LGBT and feminist communities.
Yeah, they're all part of a man hating movement. That's what feminism is. And everybody joined up in the LGBT, right? That includes the gay men who are also hated because they're male.
And even though I don't, agree with everything that I came across.
By the way, being pro-male is to be hated, right? People want you to know your place, dude. You are not even a citizen, not a second-class citizen. You are not a citizen. There's a caste system for the sexes. There are the women who are the citizens, and then there are us, and we aren't. And we don't have the same rights as they do.
In the Manosphere. I did spend about 3 years listening to a lot and learning a lot about the different groups within that. And so I guess what I will say is I was wrong about a lot of things when I was a political lesbian before transitioning. I didn't understand the plight of guys because I didn't experience it, and all I knew was what it was like to be left out.
Our plight, the lives of men are there for everyone to see. You simply denied it. You denied it as a woman because it it benefited you. And it would take empathy to look at another group of people who aren't like you and say, okay, can I put myself in their shoes? You weren't empathetic towards men. And now you're a man, you're expecting everyone to become empathetic. Like, sorry, Ramblin, it doesn't work that way. You're expecting the world to turn upside down for you alone.
Of guy spaces, a lot of looking back, a lot of my my issues towards men had to do with subconscious trauma that I went through when I was younger of being rejected. I had guy friends when I was young, but after my first puberty and bullying that happened in middle school, my guy friends basically abandoned me. And so there's a lot of unresolved stuff with that, feeling left behind. And in some ways, I don't really blame those guys. I mean, they were really young and they didn't want to be bullied, with me for being different.
Well, that's true, God. That's some understanding right there. So you're on the right road, right? This is the life experience of men right here. There's a hierarchy, and it's about sadism, right? The bullied guys, the guys at the lower end are there to be abused, right? And no one works to change that.
So, and then also my envy and competition because I was attracted to women and I seemed to be more attracted to straight women because of my trans identity. I didn't know this at the time, but
the straight women were probably better looking too. Like, come on, and hey, and presented themselves more feminine. Let's be honest.
I was very envious and jealous of guys, and it wasn't just because they ended up dating or hooking up with the women that I was interested in. Even if I ended up being with the same women before or after, what I envied was the experience of being in a male body with them.
Well, dude, here you are. Not much to envy, is there? It just goes to show you a lack of understanding of the other side, right? I think lesbians, I've met quite a few, and they're all like this. They all look at us as and think our lives are great, right? They blame us for taking all the girls. But dating women as a man is a kick in the crotch. There's nothing to envy. It's just continual work for continual rejection. It damages you spiritually and emotionally. Look at your face. You're a perfect example of it.
So after going to therapy and dealing with the trans stuff, that's when I developed compassion a lot more for men and for myself in that regard. But before that, I did have a period of what you would call, I guess, political lesbianism or,
Man hating. That's where you're going to get it wrong. It's man hating. That's what political lesbianism is.
Doing the whole social justice warrior kind of queer thing. And I was of the belief that women were victims completely
Not completely. They weren't victims at all. At all. There's the only women's issues are medical issues that don't affect men, like ovarian cancer. But every other so-called issue that women have either doesn't exist at all, like the wage gap, or it affects men more. Like Ramblin, the vote, right? You guys always jump back to the vote. Women didn't have the vote. Men didn't either. The average, lower class man didn't get the right to vote. And know what happened? They had to put their names on conscription, right? To be drafted for the men to get the vote. And the women just demanded it and got it. So the men lacked the same rights as the women of that time, of 1820, right? Or sorry, 1920, when the women finally got the right to vote, right? It was only about a decade after the men. So the men have fewer rights than women back then. So you're just wrong about this.
And that I just didn't understand evolutionary psychology. I didn't understand the intrasexual dynamics between men and women. Because when you're in the gay community, lesbians and gay men are kind of equal in a lot of ways, where a lot of straight people don't experience that. I mean, I know some that do, but I think the majority of straight people, they don't have that solidarity, that subconscious solidarity of being the same sex with your partner. There's
It has less to do with with being the same sex and being female, period, right? Because you found out, hey, your male friends abandoned you when you needed them, right? There really isn't any male solidarity.
more antagonism because of the difference in those reproductive strategies of each sex. And so, for instance, when I was a lesbian,
This has nothing to do with reproductive strategies. This is one of the main issues, or I should say, ideas, red pill ideas you get a dump, right? Ramblin. If a guy gets together with a gorgeous woman and finds out she's barren, does he dump her and say, oh, I love you, I get along with you, you're beautiful, I can have sex with you, but you can't produce children? No, he just deals with it. Maybe they'll adopt, right? But people do not care about reproduction outside of having children to take care of them. And modern living has made that obsolete, right? Well, it hasn't, but it feels like it, right? As long as everybody else is having children, you can afford not to, right?
I mean, I never really was, even though technically you would call me that because I was female and I hadn't transitioned and all of that. But there were behaviors and my psychology was still very much male and expressed in male ways, even though my socialization was more female for a long time. I was forced to be friends primarily with girls when I was younger, and I had to fit
You
in.
were forced to? Okay.
And so I had to learn how to be more feminine to a degree that wasn't real for me. But yeah, I adopted a lot of belief systems because I was also raised by very strong, dominant women. And
Strong, dominant women. Why you put it in a positive light? In other words, they were in charge, right? And you're the males in your life were subordinate, right?
and with our
So hopefully you don't believe in patriarchy theory, right?
culture being very femme-centric or focused on feminist issues for the last couple of generations.
Okay, so your parents were man haters because that's what it's a hate movement. You need to come to terms with that if you want to go forward with your life, Ramblin. You have to reject the lie that feminism is anything but a hate movement.
It was kind of common sense that you would stand up for women over men, and a
There's that gender bias.
lot of men were missing in my family, or they weren't very masculine or dominant, and they didn't teach me about what to expect as a man dating women.
Well, dude, fathers are usually pretty useless at that, even if they are masculine or dominant. Because men have to be delusional in order to engage with full-time relationships with the gals. No man wants to get with a woman and believe that she doesn't love him for himself. And that's the delusion, right? So your father, if he was, like you say, masculine and dominant, he would still not tell you the truth. He has to deny it to himself.
So, okay, anyways, it's a long story, so I'm going to do different parts to this. But I was with this particular ex for about 5 years, and we had our struggles. We went to therapy towards the end for a while, and basically what happened is, I mean, I already had some beta tendencies for sure.
First thing you got to do, or the next thing you should have to do, is get rid of the alpha beta talk. That's been disproven. There are no alpha beta males. Look how feminine Michael Jackson came off. You think he couldn't scoop up any woman he wanted to when he was at the peak of his fame? Come on, dude.
But I had a lot more alpha characteristics going into the relationship than when I left, because essentially what happened is the combination of being in the long-term relationship and being too needy. I didn't know who I was, so I was.
No, you weren't needy. You wanted the exact same thing as a man as you did as a woman. And men don't get that. Women don't want, when they say a needy man, what they mean is you're a man who wants intimacy. And that's not what they're going to give you. Not then, not now, and not tomorrow.
Wanting to spend way too much time with her. I had anxious attachment style. For the majority of that relationship was still female, not on hormones, so my estrogen. I had high testosterone for a female, but I also had higher estrogen, so I would go through mood swings.
There's no point in blaming your hormones, dude. All the needy men or the non-needy men are simply men who know it's a waste of time opening up to women. They know that makes them reject the women, reject the men. Yeah, right? You're even going to admit it later on.
And the estrogen makes you want to bond and be close all the time, and
Nonsense. Men want to bond and be close all the time with women. All of us. We're simply denied that. The women aren't interested.
that added to the neediness. So I lost whatever masculine edge that I had over time.
So your masculine edge was not showing any vulnerability. Right. Right. That's the male experience, right? And you're learning, hey, what you're saying is you should have had a man who come to you and say, women aren't interested in you and your vulnerability. It turns them off. And they're going to reject you as soon as you're not able to perform. Right? So is this really good news to you? Like, if you had a guy teach you the right things to get the girl, would that be the way you want to live your life?
And when I transitioned, it's so interesting because the masculine traits that I had that were acceptable when I was a lesbian was being disagreeable, being aggressive, being rebellious. I dropped out of high school.
None of those are masculine traits, dude. None of those are masculine traits. Just do yourself a favor, Ramblin. Type in YouTube, Karens, right? Karen videos where cops arrest them. You'll see all kinds of straight women who are disagreeable and fight with those police officers. So you're just wrong about that. That is the programming you have to drop.
And I got into partying for a while, and then I got sober, and that's where we met. And I was in groups. I couldn't obviously join a gang or anything because I guess being white and stuff. I mean, there weren't any white gangs in the area that I was in. So instead, I joined a political cult that was pretty militant. And, so I had some of these like bad boy traits as a female, but it was seen as not problematic. It was seen as empowering.
There you go. People like women, they don't like men. So the exact same traits are positive for women, negative for men, right? So you're found out right there what it is to be a man. We're seen in a negative light, period. Our sexuality is, our behavior is, our desires are.
But when I transitioned, a lot of the feminist ideology that I had practiced for a few years.
Yeah, all that man hating you practice didn't work out for you now that you're a man. Wow. Who would have thought?
From my late teens to when I started transitioning at 25, it kind of I turned on myself because all of a sudden I had become the enemy.
Right. Self-loathing, right? And you admit it, you see us as the enemy. You worship women, dude, just like the rest of us guys. And women hate our guts. And it's innate, right? No one taught you to join these groups. You just did as a woman.
Or I had become the problem, being a white, straight, what's called cis-passing male.
Exactly. You became the problem just because of the way you look. Had nothing to do with what you've done with your life. And that includes all these women who were your pals in the past, right? Who knew you for who you were. So it had nothing to do with the quality of the person. This kind of sexism is completely comparable to racism. It's like if you were part of the KKK and you converted to a black man, and then they rejected you, and you go, wow, I don't understand. I can't figure this out.
And my partner started treating me this way. I kind of ended up taking it for a bit because I didn't know how to. I didn't.
Your partner started treating you this way. Really? So it has nothing to do with your inner character as a person. She didn't love you for yourself then, did she?
Didn't know what to do, honestly.
Women's relationships with men have no depth to them, dude. None. It went skin deep. How you look to her.
Because I knew it was right because of the gender dysphoria, the sex dysphoria, the mismatch between my masculinized brain from what happened to me in utero with the pregnancy. You can go watch my other vid about that, and how it didn't match up with the wiring, and it wasn't connecting with the female body. So I knew.
I don't know why you're bringing this up, dude, because your rejection from these women have nothing to do with your dysphoria.
That being in a more male body, as male as modern medicine can get it, felt right, and that was the right thing for me to do. But as far as my masculine identity, I ended up repressing all of those masculine traits, and I ended up becoming a nice guy. And again, I had some of those.
So for you, the non-masculine man is a nice guy, right? A nice guy is a dirty term now, right? In other words, you were trying to do whatever you could to conform to what these women wanted, and it didn't work for you, right? It also says a lot about female sexuality when a good person isn't appreciated.
Traits before, but as a female, having a combination of both is more acceptable. It doesn't
It's acceptable, period.
necessarily protect you from being what are some of the terms? It's been a minute since I've been like obsessive with the red pill terminology and stuff, but what does that one guy say?
Yeah, you got to get rid of a lot of that terminology because there's a lot wrong with the red pill.
Betatization of 1,000 cuts or something like that. Okay. So having feminine traits like being agreeable, being emotional, being sensitive.
None of those are female traits. That's human across the board.
When you're a lesbian, it's not every lesbian is into that, but it's sort of like you're still a part of the sisterhood, and that's sort of expected because you're female. So you're not shamed for those traits, and you're even like in some.
Yeah, you're not shamed for any traits, dude. You can be a nice guy when you're a woman, or you can be the bad boy as a woman, and both are equally desired by both genders, right?
Lesbians, like I think for my ex was had her own masculine traits, and I think that my sensitivity and my emotionalism, because she was pretty shut down emotionally, triggered the same kind of vasopressin response in her towards me as what happens when women are crying and they trigger that response in straight men. So there's some interesting, I think biological things happening with lesbian relationships in that regard. So she wanted to take care of me more because I was cute, I was like masculine, and I had this sort of like bad boy kind of vibe about me, but I also was like, a traditionally pretty female. So
None of this saves your relationship with this woman, did it?
I think that she saw both sides of me, and she responded to the sort of pretty sensitive female side as like, this is my best friend, this is another sister, another female, so I'm gonna be there to help her, even if it turned her off sexually, right?
You're part of the sisterhood, but you turn her off sexually. So this behavior didn't turn her off sexually when you were a woman, right? Right.
Where now, as a guy, the type of the type of just dismissiveness, disgust, even the disgust responses from women, if there's any vulnerability or sensitivity shown.
Thank you, dude. Thank you. Right. You're getting to the core of it, right? Women don't like men, and our vulnerability sickens them.
I never experienced that because I had the privilege of growing up female, even though I was masculine and I got bullied for all the queer stuff. But so the women in my life, they were simultaneously the ones that were actively restricting me and in a lot of ways abusing me in the sense of not allowing me to be who I truly was, feminizing me for years and teaching me a female reproductive strategy that was not in my best interest. Because
Again, this is not a reproductive strategy. None of this is. Has nothing to do with reproduction whatsoever. You got to get rid of that idea. If it was a proper male reproduction strategy, men wouldn't be struggling so much just to get copulation. Men get rejected on the regular. So there is no proper reproductive strategy.
because that was not the strategy that would work for me with women. I wanted to date women, not men. Um, but at the same time, the confusing thing is I got a lot of love and support and connection that a lot of guys don't end up receiving either at all in their life, or they maybe only get that type of nurturing energy from women until they hit puberty, or maybe even.
Thank you for admitting that. Yeah. So you actually were able to look at us and see how we live our lives, right? And yet you still stuck to that man-hating group. And you probably still believe in a lot of the feminist rhetoric, right?
Even only until 5 or 6 years old. So I wasn't weaned off of my mom until later, because daughter and mother relationships are different in a lot of ways.
Yeah, the mother actually cares about the daughter, right? And so does the father.
Um, anyways, like I said, this is all over the place. I've got a lot to talk about, but the red pill movement and the manosphere really taught me what masculine men should have taught me in my family. And the sad part is that
To know your place and not to show vulnerability. Yeah, that's good.
my uncles, they're aware of some of this stuff, but they've been victims of it too. Um, and my dad, I don't know. I think he's aware. I think all men are really. Once you live as a guy for long enough, you kind of eventually wake up to how some of the virtue signaling and the compassion and the sort of standing up for the underdog that is very prevalent within feminist and
That's a total lie. Sorry, I have no respect for you now. Feminism does not stand up for the underdog. You'll admit it when you transitioned, how people treated you like dirt. Men are the underdogs and always have been. They are not standing up for the underdog. They're a hate group that attack men. Spread your lies somewhere else.
in queer circles. It doesn't apply to men, you know. And if it does, um,
It doesn't.
if it does, if you're being pitied, that's not a good thing. Unless you're like physically, a Chad or whatever you want to call it. If you're physically attractive to the degree that women are willing to sleep with you, even if you have nothing else going for you, if you're pitied, that is one of the biggest things that will shut down, women's sex drive towards you.
That's right, dude. Women aren't turned on by men's humanity. Duh. For one thing, they don't respect our humanity. The bad boy is a thug who's willing to commit violence on her behalf. He's a great tool. He's a great attack dog. That's what they're turned on by.
And I can already imagine that some people that are watching this that are maybe more on the left or, in my community, the trans or queer community, are probably hearing this and they might be thinking like, well, relationships aren't just about sex and desirability and but the truth is, for men especially, it's very important, especially because so many men, sex is scarce for them.
But you just admit it. If you're pitied, the sex dries up. You're right, it goes beyond sex. They don't want your intimacy, dude. Right? They don't want your intimacy.
And instead of blaming men entirely for it, and that's something that I used to do too, because I didn't understand, the whole stereotype of.
Men shouldn't be blamed at all. Men who have done nothing to deserve the scorn women have innately for us. The male human being has spent the entire existence of our species sacrificing for the opposite sex and worshiping the opposite sex. So the scorn is completely 100% undeserved.
Of men that are virgins or that can't get sex, it's because there's something so wrong with them that all they needed to do was like apply themselves and learn some social skills and like bathe like.
Yeah, take a shower, touch grass, bro, right? It's victim blaming, of course. And you were part of that victim blaming when you were female. And now here you are, you're one of the victims, and now you're saying, wow, this really blows.
That was the picture I had in my head, but now understanding all of the other socioeconomic factors that are going into creating this crisis of sexlessness.
Socioeconomic. So men don't have enough money to bribe women into their lives. Thank you for admitting that, Rambling. If you have to bribe a person into your life, they don't value you for yourself. Dude, would you pay guys to be your friend? No, because you'd know what that is, but that's what we have to do with the girls. So that should tell you everything about the relationships between the sexes.
With men, I just wasn't aware because again, I was focused on my own selfish interest with being a lesbian at the time and being female, and I was focused on my rights. I wasn't focused on,
What rights didn't you have as a woman? Don't bother answering it because it's going to be bullshit. It's going to be gaslighting.
and I was also focused on like people of color's rights and stuff like that because that was.
No, you weren't. Because a black man or a Hispanic man or a Jewish man, they're all still men. So you were part of a hate group that hated men for being their gender. Any of those minority men would suffer under you and your ideology. So that's just false. I'm not calling you a liar because in order to lie, you have to know that you're lying. You don't even realize that you're part of the hate movement. You're in denial of it.
Accepted within the friend groups and stuff that I was in. But to say that you were supportive of men's rights, I mean, back then you were automatically seen as a sexist.
Yeah, we don't deserve rights, right? Men don't deserve rights. You can't support that. That's what the equality movement that you were supposedly a part of, and may still be, is always been about, right? Keeping men down, making sure we don't have any rights, and that our rights are being stripped too, right?
And even today, I mean, I think it's changing hopefully now because the last couple of years the Manosphere stuff has been in the mainstream because it's.
It won't change until guys are honest about gender dynamics and honest about that we are the underdogs. We are the ones that have always been second-class citizens, always. We're the ones who had to go to war and go down in the mines and out to sea. And we're kidnapped and press gangs. Come on, dude.
Really hard to ignore that men are suffering right now. But
people ignore men suffering all the time, so it's not hard to ignore.
Man, I'll just say, I will be honest, the red pill really saved me in a lot of ways because my relationships, I mean, I haven't had a serious relationship since this last relationship, and that's okay because I need to have my like fuckboy phase, and so that's what I'm doing now. But I couldn't have done that.
Really? So you value a long-term relationship over just casual sex, right? So what you're saying, admitting, is that men want intimacy with women. That's this idea, this propaganda that men just want sex has always been a lie. Thanks.
without understanding a more male perspective and a more male reproductive strategy perspective, and to not shame myself for having that desire to have a lot of sexual experience and to be desired by women and to feel masculine while doing it, you know, and to not be a people pleaser and thinking about being a good guy. To it talks
Keep up the bad boy image, right? That's what the girls are attracted to. Okay. Yeah, why be a good guy? Right? Why be a great human being when you can get laid?
taught me to connect to my authentic masculine traits, to not demonize my more disagreeable or aggressive traits, to see them as natural, because that is part of my natural temperament. And, you know, so very much in that way, I was socialized to be a girl, to be nice, to be agreeable, but I always rebelled against it. But, you know, that's the issue, though, is that I have the disagreeable, aggressive side, but
That was due to your female friends. They're the ones who demanded that from you, not us guys. No, supposedly aggressive women are still desired by men, and we'd be glad to have you in our social circles.
I also am still, you know, more empathetic, I think, or more. I probably still have a more sensitive nervous system because of all the years of estrogen that I had. Um, you know, so and all of the years of being socialized more feminine. It's getting much better. I'm definitely feeling a lot more masculine and more, you know, like I have a masculine frame and understanding of the world. But
What good does that do, dude? You're still suffering from loneliness. You're still dealing with the ostracization that comes with being male.
um, I feel like I'm definitely playing catch up, and a lot of the red pill rage and resentment is gone. It still pops up every once in a while, but
You mean the abuse you receive as as a male makes you resentful? Well, you should, right? Men have a good reason to be resentful. There's no excuse for men being treated the way we are, right?
um, it's just such a different worldview. It's such a different perspective, and you know, I think it does come down to what is it, a failure of cross sex mind reading or understanding. I listen to a lot of Chris Williamson, his podcast.
Okay, he's a trad con, right? He's a scammer. So if you're listening to him, you're going down the wrong path.
I mean, yeah, there's just this information wasn't available at all within the queer lesbian communities.
Well, you wouldn't allow it because there's some male positivity to it, and you're against that.
I mean, and I remember being interested in masculinity studies and stuff, but it still felt very foreign, and it felt very dangerous to even open that up.
Of
And
course, it is dangerous, dude, right? It's like the black man talking about black rights in the KKK. He's setting himself up to be a target.
and I really needed the little bit of solidarity that I did get from the. I never got a lot of solidarity from the lesbian community because again, that wasn't the right identity for me. I never really fit in.
Well, they're women and they don't like you. You're a man. There you go.
And most of the women that were attracted to me were straight anyways, so lesbians weren't really a big fan of me. I actually fit in more with gay men because, you know, I grew up watching Disney and stuff, and I don't know, just more of the theatric. I went to an art school, and you know, being in spaces where you could talk about therapy and pop culture and stuff. I could relate with gay men when it came to that.
So the gay men were willing to accept your sensitive side. Right, right. But not the lesbians, not the women.
But anyways, I'm kind of that's why my name's Ramblin. I go all over the place. I've got
Okay, we've gone far enough. Hopefully, Ramblin, you see my response and you consider what I have to say, because you are not out of the woods yet. You still haven't come to full terms with a lot of what's going on with men and what we're up against, what you are up against. Because as soon as someone sees you, they see you as a man. They see a man, and they're going to treat you accordingly. Okay, goodbye.